Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm James, continuing on with this Balsa USA smoothie build. So in today's video, I'm going to be installing the landing gear. And this is a tail dragger. So I have the main landing gear right up here, and then I have a tail wheel assembly for the rear portion of the plane. And what I wanted to do is kind of point out a few things that I wanted to show you. Is that if you look at the picture of the smoothie and the instructions, and I think it's also on the web page and so on, they show like a solid landing gear for the main landing gear up here, and they also show these wheel pants on here. It doesn't come with that. So what the kit comes with is, for the main landing gear, it comes with these wires, and I've mentioned this before, is the wire will go on like, you have these two wires that go on like this. They're pretty strong, and they'll go on something like that. And then you'll use a copper wire and wrap it around and kind of hold the two together and then solder it, and that's how you kind of get them to stay together. And then what they would do is, there's two slots that are in this plate, which you can't see now because it's covered with Monokote, and these would fit down into the slots, and then there's some retainers that go on top of that. Now I don't have a problem with that. I think that would work fine, but just for my personal preference, I prefer the look of sort of a solid landing gear. So what I have in hand, or on hand I should say, is landing gear that I salvaged from my Great Plains Escapade 40, which I crashed a few years back. I did a video on this and kind of mentioned this in the past. And I did a video, I'll put the number up on the screen here. But what I did was, I basically put these blind nuts in here. I basically drilled holes in the base plate, or this plate for the landing gear, and I installed these blind nuts, and that's how I'm going to attach this older landing gear on. And again, it's just personal preference. I just like the way it looks over the wire landing gear. And really, if I didn't have this, I probably would have just gone forward and just used the wire landing gear. But anyhow, so I don't have any problem with this. I think this would be fine, and I'm not saying don't use it or don't recommend it. Okay, one thing I will mention though is that one thing I did have a little bit of concern with is, if this was obviously mounted, if the landing gear was on here as such, and I had a hard landing and I kind of twisted it, I would just kind of imagine what it would look like if I twisted this landing gear by accident. And that probably would happen because I'm not a perfect RC pilot. And I thought about what it would look like if I twisted this landing gear. Boy, it's everywhere. And then how I would kind of bend it back to kind of make it look right again, or get it straightened out. I thought that would be kind of get kind of squirrely on me. So I thought, anyhow, I just kind of thought about a few things like that, as I mentioned. So I'm going to go ahead, like I mentioned, and just go with this solid landing gear. What I'm going to do in this video is attach this solid landing gear up here as such. And then I also want to talk about, and I'm going to move on to the tail gear. Okay, so let me go ahead and flip the plane around here. Show the tail section. Let me move this over here a little bit. All right, so the tail section, again, what comes with the kit is sort of a simple little setup, and what they have is a little plywood plate, as you can see here, and then they give you a pre-bent tail wheel wire. Okay, and the way this works is that what you do for the instructions is, you would screw this little plate on here like that, and then you would drill a hole in this little plate, and then what you would do is you would just basically kind of feed, or just kind of push the wire through the little hole in the plate. And let me see how it would go here. It would go like this, go like that, and of course this is the rudder. So what it would do is, you would drill a hole into the rudder back here, plug this in like that. So it would kind of look sort of like, like that. just kind of typical, right? Nothing too special about that. And then, oops, I should probably bring it up a little bit. So it'll probably be something sort of like this. Again, no big deal. And then again, there would be a hole in here, and then this would be on here like this. And then what would happen is the rudder would attach, and then the tail wheel wire would go through that little plate right there. And that's basically the assembly for the tail wheel. Now, what I would do, what they didn't include in the kit, was like a little retaining collar, and I have some spare stuff sitting around here. And if I were going to use this one in the kit, I would put a little collar on here. This is my only recommendation, would be that in between, kind of below the, again, where this is the bottom, right? So I'd put the collar on like this, bring it around, and then I'd tighten that collar down right there so that it would rest against this little plate. Hope that makes sense. The reason I would do that is because if this tail wheel wire is plugged into the rudder like this, okay? Oops, I should do it this way. It's plugged into the rudder like this, okay? And then you have this plate on here like that, right? Kind of holding it in like that. What would happen is when the tail wheel hits the ground, if it hits the ground hard, it's going to push up on the rudder itself, right? So if this is sitting here like this, right, and this is on here, well, I wish I had another hand, and the tail wheel hits hard, it will push up on the rudder. So what I wanted to do, if I was going to use this one, is I would put this little retaining, these little collars, I'd put one of those before the plate. That would stop that kind of pressure from pushing up on the rudder. And the reason I would do that was because I would want to hopefully that will help sort of prevent the rudder sort of wearing out more, because if you kind of kept pushing on this, right, and you had your hinges in here, you know, over time that thing would keep, you know, the pressure from kind of just rolling around on the ground and landing and such would be kind of pushing up on those hinges, and that could kind of weaken it. So if I were going to use the one that came with the kit, I would put this little collar on it like I said. Okay, so if you look at the way they made the wire here, is I put this will be in here like this. You'll see that, let me find the wheel. Where's my wheel? If I put the wheel on here that I have, like this, you'll see that the wheel, again, it's not perfect because it would be like right in line with the rudder itself. You'll see that the wheel is really off center from the rudder itself. So the wheel would be kind of off to one side, something like this. And, you know, I don't know, is that big of a deal? May not be, but that may be a little bit squirrely. So I wish they would have put like a dog leg into the landing gear. Usually what you'll see is I have a landing gear bracket or assembly I bought this little Debro 40 size tail wheel assembly. So let me pop out this little wheel bracket out of here, or at least the wire I should call it. And what you'll see, obviously, is it has that little dog leg kind of built into it. Now my wheel's a little bit too big for this bracket, or this piece of wire. I'm kind of close. But you can kind of see that when that dog leg is in there, it helps, or basically the wheel's lined up kind of along the center line of the wire and also the rudder. And to me that just makes for a cleaner look, and also I think it's a little bit better performance, and helps you kind of keep the plane tracking better if everything's sort of lined up like that. So again, personal preference. This one probably would work just fine that came with the kit. I would just recommend putting the collar on it to help retain it, but it would be okay, and I'm not saying don't use this one. And I will be using these Debro low bounce wheels. These are 2.5 inch diameter, and these are new. Obviously I have a whole box of old wheels. And then what also I wanted to show is that these are the sort of the old kind of like the AXII sets that came with the Escapade 40 landing gear, which I'll be using. So first step will be to screw these on, and I have a set of, I don't know what size these are, but I have a set of screws, and I'm just going to go ahead and screw these on, and I'm just going to use a little bit of Loctite. I'm just going to use, this is the thread locker blue. This is the removable type. I'm not going to put a whole bunch on there, but just a little bit. I also going to be using these little lock washers. And then one thing I do need to check is on the inside is if you can kind of see inside here. Hopefully you can kind of see the blind nuts or the T-nuts, and then you can see the screws are coming through. I need to make sure that those don't interfere with my tank. And I know they won't, because my tank is going to be sitting up higher back on top of this kind of bulkhead in here. Hopefully you can kind of see that. Yeah. So yeah, these are those screws will be deep enough so they won't interfere with the gas tank. So I just wanted to make sure that was the case. This, by the way, is the exact same way that it was mounted onto the Escapade 40. Okay. Okay, so here's the old axle sets that came off, again, that Escapade 40. And these things have been through the ringer, but they're still good. So let me pull off the little collars. Yeah, that thing took a major crash. I went up, I was basically going straight up into the air, and I came, I guess you would call it like a hammer stall or something like that, and I came straight back down, and then the tail section just ripped right off. Wasn't going that fast, I didn't think. When I found that thing, it was DOA. Okay. Then these are lock nuts. They have that nylon kind of lock nut material in there. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and pull these guys out of here. I don't know if I'm going to have to, I may have to drill these out. I'm not sure if they're going to fit on these axles. We will find out right now. Oh, there they go. Okay. Great. So I'm going to use two, oops, lost it. A collar on the inside. I don't know if I need to do that, actually. Let's see how it looks. Yeah, I'll put a collar on the inside. The reason I'm going to do that is because there's a flat spot on this little axle, that you screw into with the little collar, and I don't want the wheel to be kind of shaking back and forth or moving back and forth. So I'll put these collars kind of as retainers on the inside, and I'll adjust those after I get the wheel on. Okay, just a tiny bit. Okay. I don't mind having a little bit of play back and forth. You want it to move freely, but just want to. So probably about, I'm just going to estimate maybe about a, and again, this isn't anything special. I'm just going to estimate about 1/8 of an inch of play, kind of back and forth along the axle like that between the two retainers. Drop a little, my hand's in the way again, but I'm going to put a little drop of Loctite on this guy too. Okay. Yeah, so I have maybe about 1/8 of an inch of play back and forth. All right, let me do the other side. Okay, so the main landing gear is now attached with the wheels, and I'm going to go ahead and flip it around and we'll put the tail wheel assembly on. Alright, well I was checking my time and I think this video is getting long enough, so I'm going to go ahead and hold off on the tail wheel assembly until my next video in this series. So I'll leave it there. So the landing gear, like the front main landing gear is on, looking pretty good. And then on my next video in this series, like I mentioned, I'll come back and we'll put the tail wheel assembly on. Alright, so that's it for now. Thanks again for watching my channel, and we'll see you next time.